thanks for coming. I know studying for the MCAT is probably not the funnest thing in the world, but Noah and I are trying to really help you. And I just want to say Noah is awesome. If you haven't gone to his events or sessions yet about content, they're exceptional. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. But today we're going to be focusing on strategy. So I'll be focusing on one strategy today, but we'll also be doing other strategies in the future. So real fast, today I just want to talk, I don't know, have any of you guys seen the Avengers? Hopefully someone's seen the Avengers. If not, then maybe we are in the wrong place. Has anybody seen the Avengers? Maybe anyone? Okay, so let's just talk about the Avengers real fast. You're like, what on earth does this have to do with strategy? But I just want to bring this up to kind of start off learning strategy for the MCAT. And that is because all of our strategies that we're going to use are kind of specific to the different circumstances that we run into on the MCAT. So for example, with like the Avengers or any superhero movie, you know, you might have Hulk and he might be great in one situation, but bad in another, right? Or you might have Spider-Man who's great in one situation or bad in another. And it's the same thing with the strategies that we use for the MCAT. We need to recognize when we're going to use the strategy and then implement that strategy accordingly. Real fast, can you guys tell me kind of when you're planning on taking the MCAT, if that's okay? We already heard from Evan, that's at the end of August, but Gopesh and Favor, would you like to share just when you're starting or when you're taking the MCAT?
I'm also taking the MCAT at the end of August.
Awesome. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, me as well.
Okay, perfect. All three in August. So maybe these strategies are going to come in handy as you kind of transition from content into more practice. But today, like you guys saw, the idea is to learn how to highlight to predict answers. And the kind of the win or the situation when we're going to use this is in the science section. So not cars, but in the three other science sections, we're going to want to use this strategy, and I'm going to show you how to do it. But we're going to use this strategy in all of the science sections. And then the quick why. So the reason why we're going to do this is it's going to help us predict the answers that we're going to get. And it's also going to act as a checkpoint. And I'll show how that's done, but just want to give you kind of a little summary of what the strategy is all about. So real fast, we're going to get into the practice, but I just want to show you what we're highlighting. Do you guys highlight already? Evan, Gopesh, and Favor, do you guys highlight at all? Cool. Evan saying yes. Gopesh and Favor. What about you guys?
Not really.
Not really. And Gopesh?
I try to highlight as you know, I try to limit it as much as possible because I tried to highlight a lot initially and it just took up a lot of time. So I've just been trying to limit that as much as I can. Just trying to stick to highlighting just the important parts of it. Perfect.
Okay, great. And I want to bring this up what Gopesh said, and Noah, feel free to jump in whenever you'd like as well. But sometimes it's hard to know what to highlight because sometimes, have you guys ever felt like you're highlighting way too much, like Gopesh said, or you're not highlighting at all? It's kind of a tricky balance. Today, I kind of want to show you what like the best things are to highlight and why we would highlight. And we really want to stay away, like Gopesh said, from highlighting everything, right? So here's 4 things that I think are key for highlighting. One would be words specific to MCAT topics. So for example, we know the MCAT tests a lot on amino acids, right? So if you see the word cysteine or if you see serine, then those are key words that it's kind of strange that that's going to be in this random passage, right? So those are key words about a topic. Noah, are there any keywords that you like to highlight? I don't know if you want to hop in here.
Yeah, I like your idea of topics, say like amino acids, or if there's a passage, say about like radiochemistry, for instance. Like I think having a topic, and then maybe like some keywords, or I see you have formulas and stuff like that. I think those are all appropriate use of highlighting.
Awesome.
An entire passage is not helpful.
Not helpful, right? And we're really going to try to stick to highlighting just one word for these things. But just like Noah said, we can highlight variables and formulas if that's kind of a weakness of yours. So you could highlight like mass or acceleration, force. One thing that I do like to highlight a full sentence on, or highlight more than normal, is the purpose of the study. That can direct you to lots of correct answers if we know really what type of study we're learning and what the purpose is of the study. And then finally, words like power words. So that could be activated, inhibited, things that can show a relationship from a subject in the paragraph, because that can also help us find answers to what we're studying. So with that being said, we're going to hop over to a demo, but does anybody have questions about this right here? Perfect. We'll have questions at the end, but just let us know and you can feel free to interrupt whenever. So we're going to do this quick demo. I'm going to just show you quickly how I would highlight maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs from an AMC passage. And then we're going to get into you guys practicing and we're going to share our highlights. Okay, so let's do this. Quick pro tip. If you're studying for the MCAT, Jack Weston has free passages. So any MCAT material that is free is awesome. And there's just lots of great free materials out there. Okay, can everybody see this? Perfect. So once again, I'm going to try to highlight kind of power words. I'm going to highlight keywords from topics. If there is a purpose to the study, I might try to highlight that and make it maybe a more bold highlight. And you're going to see that I'm going to highlight really small parts. And I'm also going to highlight at the end of each paragraph, because we're trying to do this fast. We don't want to spend so much time getting into it that we won't have time to answer the questions, right? So Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis are considered inflammatory bowel diseases. Studies have shown that heat shock proteins such as HSP70, 60, and 10 play a critical role in the inflammatory response to several stressors and immune regulation. Right here, doesn't seem like there's a lot of important things, but if I just want to know that these are heat shock proteins, I guess I could highlight that, but there's nothing here that is super important or like a key word for me. So I'm just going to keep going. HSP 60 and 10 are traditionally considered intracellular molecules. Okay, so they're inside of the membrane, confined to the mitochondria, and dedicated to assisting in protein folding, which is activated by the presence of increased levels of phenylalanine. Ooh, that sounds interesting. We'll get back to this. Both HSPs are found in increased levels during carcinogenesis of several anatomical regions, signified by high levels of P53. They are thought to have other roles as well. So these HSPs have other roles. Okay. One of which is interaction with and activation of cells involved in the innate and adaptive immune responses. Okay, so I'm going to pause right there and I'm going to highlight things that I think maybe will be key topics or keywords. So one of those will be phenylalanine. Can you guys see how that is kind of like we're doing this entire study and they just throw in phenylalanine? Like how interesting is that this normal study would have phenylalanine in it? And that's a key topic, right, an amino acid. The other thing that I can see here is innate and adaptive immune responses, right? Sometimes the MCAT has a whole section on different immune responses. And so I could see, okay, I might just quickly highlight those two. I'm going to pause right there and let Noah hop in if he has anything. Noah, is there anything that you would highlight in this paragraph as well?
Yeah, no, I think you got everything. I think it's important. I agree. Heat shock proteins. I think phenylalanine. Now you're starting to think about nonpolar amino acids, innate and adaptive immune response. You're starting to wrap up your ideas of what is innate and adaptive immunity. So you're starting to think about some things. So I think that's appropriate.
Perfect. Yep. And let's notice how Noah, when he's going about this as well, when he's making these highlighting, you see how he starts to make connections in his mind, right? He's starting to think phenylalanine, nonpolar, large amino acid, right? Innate and adaptive might bring other things to his mind. And so we're basically prepping, or in MCAT terms, we're priming our mind to answer these questions, right? We're going to get over here. Before we kind of just show one answer to this or use of this, does anybody have any questions of how we just highlighted those? Awesome. And welcome, Xavier, as well. We're happy to have you. Okay, so we'll just kind of save some times right here, but let's just kind of hop over. And this is just one question. It says question number 1, which amino acid would most likely elicit the same response in protein folding with HSP60, right? So we immediately can then use, right? Our mind was already primed to start thinking of amino acids. So that's why we're highlighting, but we can also highlight for the second reason, which is checkpoints. Okay, so what that means is we're making it easy for us to go from answering the question to finding the answer. Now, what we have highlighted here, right? We've already highlighted phenylalanine, and this is asking about amino acids. So my mind's already going right here to phenylalanine. It says right here that the protein, it's dedicated assisting in protein folding, which is activated by the presence of increased levels of phenylalanine. So it seems like phenylalanine is increasing this heat shock protein. And then it gives me 4 different amino acids that might elicit the same response. Does anybody have an idea of what that answer would be? No stress if you don't know. All good. So in my mind, I would think, okay, the biggest non-polar here that we have would probably be tryptophan. And so that's what I would decide, right? But right now, we're not focusing so much about answering. We're just showing how important it is to, and how useful it is to highlight, right? So those are the 2 reasons. One is we're priming our mind to predict answers. And number 2 is we're basically making checkpoints for us to go back in and find the answer. And I want to highlight this, that the AMC, they're trying to get us all to be doctors, right? And as doctors, they want us to use evidence in our reasoning. And so a lot of times the answers the answers to the questions are typically found around evidence in the passage, especially with the keywords, right? So they're basically teaching us to find a keyword and then basically match that as an evidence to an answer. Obviously, we're going to use different strategies, but this is one of those main basic strategies that are going to help us. We're going to get into practice right now, but first, does anybody have any other questions before we get into practice? Okay, awesome. Let's hop right into it. I'm going to share this. Okay, so this is what we're going to do, guys. So we're going to go over this first passage together. So I want you to take 3 minutes to read the passage. And I want you to try to make your highlights. And then once you make your highlights, we're going to share, if you feel comfortable, we're going to share your highlights together. And we'll talk about like, okay, this is the reason why I highlighted this, right? And this is also a great time to ask questions to Noah and I. And there's no truly correct answers here, but we want to start giving reasonings for why we're highlighting things. So with that said, I'm going to put this into the chat. This is the first one. And let me know if you have any questions, and we'll start the 3 minutes. Did you guys see that link in the chat? Give a thumbs up. Perfect. Okay. So with that being said, I'm going to go to this page so you can kind of refer back to this if you need. But why don't you take 3 minutes and highlight the words that you think you would highlight if you were really doing this passage, and then we'll start sharing them together. And I'm going to do a 3-minute timer right here as well. Perfect. Okay, ready, set, go. Have about a minute left. Ten seconds. That's an intense alarm. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing this. And would love to start off kind of hearing your guys' thoughts and what you highlighted. No stress. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to, but this is a great moment to kind of share and see, you know, get some feedback on how you're doing. So maybe we'll start with maybe Evan and Gopesh and then Favor. Evan, would you like to share yours? No stress if you don't want to.
Yeah, totally. I can definitely do that. So I guess I'm assuming that we're all able to see the passage, so I'm not going to share my screen. But I guess kind of how I approached it is in that first little paragraph, if you will, I highlighted voluntary control and involuntary control. Just because for me that kind of started clicking, like, okay, something involving like neural activity. And then in that second blob of text, like the second paragraph, I highlighted storage and elimination, just because I felt that that'd be a potential like question for them to like go more in depth about. And in the third paragraph, I highlighted the sympathetic postganglionic nerves as well as noradrenaline. And in that fourth and final paragraph, I highlighted parasympathetic efferent pathways, as well parasympathetic postganglionic nerves, and then acetylcholine, just because I started to notice just the trend between both kind of like the different systems of our nervous system and whatnot.
Awesome. That was great, Evan. Thanks for sharing. We're going to get back and we'll have a little bit more discussion about everything that we highlighted, but how did you feel about it? Do you feel like it was different than things you've done in the past as far as highlighting?
I definitely felt I was striving to do a little bit less highlighting than what I typically do in the past. I wouldn't say that I highlight everything and anything. However, like I do know that I seem to highlight kind of like a very important sentence instead of just getting like maybe one or two keywords from that sentence. I'd rather just do the whole sentence, which I tried a different approach of kind of just like picking and choosing more so keywords. So we'll see when we get into the questions if I notice any kind of like change in like understanding and whatnot.
Awesome. Yep. You'll have to let us know. That's great. Okay, let's go to Gopesh. Would you feel comfortable sharing your screen or talking about your highlights?
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely talk about them. I feel like I pretty much highlighted the same words as Evan. The only other word in addition that I highlighted was nitric oxide in the last paragraph, just because I felt like it was another compound that was being released. So it just felt like it was important to highlight that as well. But apart from that, I pretty much highlighted the same words.
Awesome. Awesome. And then same question as Evan, do you feel like this was different in the past? Do you think this was more effective or not as effective? And feel free just to be open and share your thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like this passage in particular was pretty jargon heavy. So it's really tempting to highlight a lot of different words, especially in the third paragraph. They've given names of different receptors as well. We have beta adrenergic, I think. So it's very tempting to highlight a lot of different words in this passage. So yeah, it was definitely useful to sort of limit myself to highlight just the most important ones. So yeah, it was a good practice, I think.
Perfect. No, that's great. And I just realized that other people who might watch this in the future might not know exactly what we're talking about because they didn't see the passage. So I'm just going to highlight some of the ones you guys talked about. It seems like these were some of the key ones that we had: sympathetic, and feel free to, I'll keep adding more as we do this, but let's go to favor. Favor, was there any highlights that you felt like you wanted to add to this or things that you highlighted?
No, like the two previous people said, I pretty much highlighted the same things as them. I just didn't highlight the like sympathetic post ganglionic nerves. I mean, I highlighted it first and then I unhighlighted it because I thought I was overthinking. So I was like, but other than that, like I highlighted involuntary, voluntary, the noradrenaline, and then the acetylcholine are the ones that I highlighted.
Perfect. No, that's great. And you're right? I mean, sometimes you brought up a great point. Sometimes you're like, man, should I be highlighting this? And I want to highlight, that's funny, highlight how important it is that your thought process is trying not to go overboard, right? We want to be kind of picky with our highlights. We want to make sure that when we're highlighting something, it's actually going to be useful for us when we're answering the question. So just want to say that what Favor's doing, it sounds like what everyone's doing so far is great, right? We want to be kind of picky with our highlights just to make them useful. Okay, let's go to Xavier. I don't know, you kind of logged off, Xavier. Do you want to share the highlights that you were talking about?
So what I highlighted is the question as it's on your screen, and as an adult, micturition involves which of the following branches of the nervous system. So on the top of the paragraph, it talks about how, hold on, let me go back to it. It talks about how the urination occurs involuntarily until the age of 3 to 5 years, after which it can be regulated voluntarily by a neutral control system spanning the brain, spinal cord, and peripheral ganglia. I made sure to highlight that first sentence because as you can see for the answers, it says central, peripheral, autonomic, somatic, and I know that the central nervous system involves the brain and the spinal cord, so I made sure to highlight that first sentence.
Great. Okay, I want to let's talk about something that Xavier did, which is a strategy that we weren't thinking about talking today, but this is like a great small strategy. Is you know, we never want to fully read the answers before reading the questions, but like Xavier shows, is that, you know, out of the periphery of our eye, if we just see like, okay, central, peripheral, autonomic in a question, then that can help us know like what else is important when we read the passage. So I just want to point out that that's a great little mini strategy. If you start seeing answer choices for question 1, that can quickly show you some things that you can highlight while you go through the passage. So really well done. I'll just kind of highlight this right here. But really, really, really great. Thanks, Xavier. Sally, it sounds like you just hopped on, but we're going to have another practice right here next. Does anybody have any questions, or no, is there anything that you'd like to add to what we did?
No, I think you guys all did great. I loved the participation, and I think you know, it's a dense passage. This is neuro, so some people are going to feel at home, some people are going to be like, get me out of here. But yeah, good job. I really liked Xavier's point about thinking about the different levels of the nervous system even at the beginning because of the answer choices. That's a really good pickup.
Really great pickup. Nice job. Okay, yeah, and that would, you know, talking again about the two purposes about highlighting, right? One is priming our mind. You know, I think as we were doing this, you're automatically thinking, oh, okay, they might ask about sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic. Then also, it seems like right here, we're kind of looking about like, okay, definitely the nervous system. So that's that first part, right? That's the reason why we're doing this, is predicting. And the second part is the checkpoint. And Xavier just showed this, but you know, if we weren't to look over to this question in the beginning, when we read this question, we can come back to a checkpoint. And so we can say, okay, as an adult involves which of the branches of the nervous system? And we can say like, oh, where did it talk about that in the paragraph? And if we didn't highlight, we're going to see lots of words. Oh, that just disappeared. I'm so sorry that disappeared. Let me go back to that. Hopefully that doesn't happen in your MCAT. But if you did highlight, then you could immediately come back to this first sentence like Xavier pointed out. So great job. Let's do one more, and then we're going to do the same thing for this next one, and then we'll just finish off with some questions, okay? So I'm going to put this next one in the chat. And then same thing, we'll take 3 minutes, and then we'll just highlight, or we'll share what we highlighted. So do you guys all see the link in the chat? We all good? Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to set a 3-minute timer. And you guys can begin. You're at 2 minutes. 35 seconds. All right, awesome. Okay, guys. So hopefully that went well. It looks like a couple others just joined on right at this moment. So sorry if you just came in and you didn't know what was going on, but basically everybody's been practicing highlighting and using some of the strategies and tools we learned today. Let's get a couple suggestions of what people highlighted. Maybe we'll kind of start from the bottom and go back up, and then we'll finish here in just a couple minutes. So Sally, what was maybe one or two highlights that you felt like were the most important in the passage?
Yeah, so I highlighted extracellular plaques at neuronal junctions and buildup, and then I highlighted NFTS and cell death. That's all I highlighted for the first paragraph.
Awesome. We'll probably do that's perfect. Just for the
Mhm.
sake of time, we'll move on to the second paragraph with Xavier, and then we'll kind of talk about everyone's thoughts. Xavier, what did you do for the second paragraph?
So I annotated extracellular plaques, NFTs, and cell death just like Sally did. I also highlighted down in the bottom, to test the different types of groups of mice, wild type, AD. I also made sure to annotate, going back up to the first paragraph, the amyloid beta 40 and 42 peptides. So that's really what I annotated.
Perfect. That's great. Favor, what do you want to share?
For the second paragraph, I annotated the HN. Exerts protective effects against AD-related neurotoxicity. And then as the strongest HN derivative, I highlighted that one. And then also both HN and ADNF activity, which are both shown to have neuroprotective effects.
Okay, perfect. Let me put that down there. Okay, awesome. Let's go on to Gopesh. Anything for the third paragraph here?
I actually did not highlight anything from the third paragraph just because I thought it was easier to get that information from the graph as opposed to highlighting the words in the paragraph. But for the second paragraph, I think the only other words that I highlighted were CLN and the C terminus of activity dependent neurotrophic factor.
Hey, I love this one. The C terminus is great. And I also want to highlight what Gopesh did here is we don't need to highlight in every paragraph, especially sometimes the paragraphs are better represented in the graph. So that's also a completely great and awesome move. Nice job. Okay, we'll finish off with Evan.
Yeah, so I think everyone's done a great job so far, and I'm very similar with kind of everything. Kind of the only thing that's a little bit different is, for my sake, in that last paragraph before the figure, I just highlighted the first sentence. I knew that that's what the study was all about, but I think just if it came up in a question, I just quickly needed to glance of like just a quick little reminder, then like it was there for me to have. So I kind of felt like that was just like the overall just the purpose sentence, and I kind of just highlighted that. But yeah, everything's very similar.
Okay, no, that's great. So last thing, I guess, Noah, do you have any thoughts here?
No, yeah, I think you guys did a good job of getting the overall, I think knowing that the passage is about Alzheimer's disease, knowing the pathogenesis of amyloid beta and tau, and then what the study is about, I think are the main points that you want to get away.
Awesome. Yeah, that study is a really important thing, like Noah said, especially for a lot of questions will be asked about the study design itself. As you can see right here, we're running out of time, but this is asking about that study. So knowing which paragraph the study's in, and also parts about the study. Just want to give a couple nitpicky things that might really help. One highlight that I think is really important is this 24 amino acid. If you can kind of see, like, that's kind of a weird detail to add into a paragraph, right? But it's a common thing to be asked, okay, like how many kilodaltons are in the amino acid? And so that's a really important one. Also, when you look at like specific amino acids, sometimes they'll do them in abbreviations. That's also important. And then the last thing is just trying to keep it down to one word when you highlight. So maybe just the word strongest or just the word protective. And that makes things a little less messy and easier to come back to. But overall, really great, everyone. Just want to emphasize that you guys did a really excellent job. We're about to end now to kind of start with just the normal study session. But does anyone have any questions? Awesome. I don't think Juliet's quite here yet, but that's kind of the end of the MCAT strategy section for today. Noah, is there anything else you want to share, just like as a send-off?
No, yeah, I think this was really great. I think, test taking strategies, I always tell people is content review is the first one, and then test taking strategies are really what take you from an okay score to a great score. So it's really important that you take mind of these, and I think you did a great job of going through highlighting. It can be a great asset. Just make sure. I was always that person when I was starting out with my test prep of highlighting literally the entire passage. So don't do that. I think you guys learn better, and it'll make you more efficient on test day.
Awesome. Yeah, couldn't agree more with Noah, right? You want to be very purposeful with your highlighting. One way to do that, just as a reminder, is to highlight once you've read the entire paragraph. So come back and then highlight maybe just a little keyword or keyword there. Be very purposeful with it. But couldn't agree more with Noah. You got to learn the content, or else you don't understand the MCAT and what's being asked. But strategies are kind of what take you to that next level. I will post on the Slack page. Hopefully everyone's on the Slack page. If not, just let Noah and I know. But I'll post on the Slack page the rest of the strategies. That way you guys can have access to them. And you can always reach out to either Noah or I if you have any questions about strategies or MCAT content in general, and we are happy to help. But with that being said, thank you guys for hopping on, and thank you for your time. And I think Juliet should be hopping here in just a second.
Yeah, and also just to add, just in case that you guys weren't aware, we're going to be doing these events. Riley and I are going to alternate. So later this month, I'm going to be covering biochem. That's going to be more of like actually going through practice questions, and you can really pick my brain about how I dissect passages and questions. And then he's going to have a strategy session in August. So that's what's coming up for you guys.
Yeah. Once again, Noah's sessions are awesome. Noah, do you know the date for your session?
Yeah, it should be July 16th.
Okay, awesome. That's great. Does anybody have any questions while we wait for Juliet?
Yeah, literally can be about anything. You can pick our brain about
It can
whatever.
it can be about anything.
I kind of came into the meeting a little late because I had in my schedule that it was actually supposed to start at 6:45, but I think I had the times mixed up, and I realized that the study session starts at 6:45. So I'm like kind of sad that I missed out on the first part of the meeting. But is there any way you could kind of like go through the strategies you kind of like went over really quickly, or like the high points?
Yeah, of course. Let me and I'll share. So the whole video recording will be shared, so that's great. but I'll just quickly kind of show you just a 1-minute kind of overview. Let me just bring that up. Kadil, do you have any questions in the meantime while I bring this up? I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
No questions. I came in for the study.
Awesome. Yep, Juliet should be here shortly. Okay, Sally. So this is kind of what we talked about. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So basically what we started off with is that your strategies are going to be kind of like the Avengers. So basically we just talked about how just like the Avengers have their own different skill sets, we're going to have different strategies for different moments in time. And then we talked about today our number one strategy to start with was just highlighting keywords to predict answers. And we want to do that because it'll kind of prime our brain for the answers or the questions that will be asked, and it'll also act as a checkpoint. Then I'll share these, and you can find these on Slack. But these are what to highlight, and you really want to highlight only one-word segments. We don't want to highlight a lot of things. So these are kind of the most important things maybe to highlight. And then we went ahead and did a demo and then a practice. But what questions maybe do you have?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for going over that. Yeah, like for the very last passage we went over, I like kind of did a longer highlight. So I guess doing like the main points really helps. But I guess like my main question coming into this was like obviously learning about strategies, but like highlighting, which I kind of like learned, but I still like struggle with like the critical thinking part. So like knowing how to, which affects my timing. So if you have any like advice on like being able to kind of analyze and like interpret the passage a little quicker, like I know that comes with more practice, but I don't know if there's another thing that will kind of like help it make sense for me to kind of bring it all together a little faster. But sometimes like I'll like read a passage and not understand, end up rereading, which takes up a lot of time. So like any advice on like that kind of like strategy mindset going into dissecting passages?
Awesome. So it's, if I understand right, a lot of it that you're struggling with is maybe comprehension and then doing it quickly. Is that kind of what?
Yeah, right. Like comprehending and like creating like relationships, I guess, for cars it's more comprehending. For like science, it's more like if they give you like a relationship, how to like figure everything out, and including like data interpretation.
That's great. That's a great question. I've got a couple ideas. Noah, is there anything that you would want to start off with?
Yeah, so it's kind of a little broad, but I'll give it my best shot here. I think one of the things when you're pressed for time, say when you're struggling to comprehend like a really, like you look at a graph and you're just like, I don't know what I'm looking at, or this table is really dense, or the passage itself was really dense. In that case, I think it's okay to go back to the questions and look at the questions and see what are they asking, so you can get sort of a clue. And I talked about this in my first MCAT session, where we went over chemistry and physics, and we were going over practice questions. But I think one of the things that can help you, if you know you're going to need more time on a passage, and that's perfectly fine, try and find out where you can shave time elsewhere. So one of the things, like if you're looking at the answer choices, I always tell people rule out 2, give yourself at least a 50-50 shot. So any answer choice that doesn't make sense, or doesn't comport with the passage, like rule that out. So then you're not focusing on 4 things, now you're focusing on 2 things. And so I think that's one step that you can kind of go for, at least initially.
Yeah, that was awesome. I love what Noah said, especially just giving yourself a shot, right? And sometimes it's nice to basically like if you kind of see that first question pop up and maybe it's talking about amino acids or something, then to look for that when you're reading your passage. I want to share, I'm going to share this, and I'll share this in the group chat as well. But to answer your question, I think you kind of have to implement a couple different strategies, actually. So can you see this, Sally?
Yes, I can see it.
Awesome. Okay. We'll be going through these more in depth during these sessions, but I want to show that there's a couple different strategies, and I'll put this in the Slack, or you can take a screenshot of it right now. But these can maybe help. So for example, let's say you were doing a bio passage, first off, just like setting the time limits. These are the time limits that I'd recommend, but everyone does things a little differently. The next thing that's like a really simple strategy that not a lot of people do is this one. It is the scroll to the bottom of the passage before you start. So then you can see how long the passage is and how much time you should be kind of spending, right? And you can also see if it's really graph heavy or if there's lots of acronyms. This is the one we went over today, right? Actively predicting the questions while you're reading, right? So Noah kind of talked about this today, that when you see an amino acid, you might highlight the amino acid in the passage, and you might think to yourself, oh, this is a non-polar amino acid, right? Just really fast. And that can kind of prime you for the questions and help you really comprehend. Another one that's really helpful is if you see a paragraph with lots of acronyms, right? So let's say you see like, I don't know, ATP, HGNC, FLC, I don't know, just tons of acronyms. That might be a sign to you that you might need to draw out that paragraph, especially if it's kind of like, oh, this activates this and this inhibits that. That might be a sign that you might actually need to quickly draw out a quick pathway of what's going on. So that's kind of a lot to share at once, but just want to show that there's a lot of different strategies that you kind of want to learn and then implement in the moment that you see kind of the need for it. Did that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, no, that all of that makes complete sense. Thank you so much for going over that. I think that those strategies help with like comprehension, how you broke it down. I think for me, I didn't really think of thinking of the different topics that they could ask, but I guess looking at little cues or triggers that they could possibly ask questions about, like you said, the amino acids definitely will help as I'm looking through. So I'll try that strategy and see if I can comprehend the passage quicker that way.
Yeah, and best of luck. Once again, you can always reach out to Noah or I. I just want to say one or two things that just came to mind. One is, if you're really struggling with comprehension, you can always rephrase. That's kind of a more Cars thing, but you can always read a sentence and then in your mind quickly kind of sum it up in your mind, and that can help. But the other thing that I was going to say that goes along with Noah is it's really hard to implement strategy unless you know the content. How do you feel about your content?
Yeah, no, I feel pretty good, maybe 65-70% on content. Probably need to do a little more, but I did want to kind of introduce myself to more practice questions than just spending a lot of time on content.
Awesome. Yep, that's great. Just want to, and Noah said this earlier, that content's kind of your foundation. So it's hard sometimes to know if you're missing a problem based off strategy or content. But once you have all of your content basically down, then you know that you're missing the problem based off of a strategy or a comprehension. And that's going to help you kind of make the adjustments as necessary. So just a little plug, keep up with the content, try to do the content as much as you can. And Noah's sessions are awesome to kind of hop in and watch those as well.
Right. Do you have any last minute tips on content, or any resources that you used specifically that you think helped you most? Of course, I know there's everyone talks about the Kaplan set and watching videos, but I didn't know if there were specific things that helped you do well.
Yeah. What would you say, Noah?
Yeah. So specifically for content, I did a MCAT prep course, just full transparency. I did blueprints. I thought it was absolutely fantastic for content review. I know that everybody's financial situation is different, and the time that you can put into content review. Basically, any major company that puts out content review resources is going to be fine. As far as free things, I know Leia Versailles has a great YouTube channel. Khan Academy has a great YouTube channel. Organic Chemistry Tutor has a great YouTube channel where he, and they all go through different aspects of MCAT course content that's relevant for you. Any book. And then, depending on how in the weeds your undergrad courses get, because a lot of that stuff you really don't need to do on the MCAT, but don't feel bad about going back to, oh man, what did Professor so-and-so say to me about SM1 versus SM2 reactions? Like, your courses have been prepping you for the MCAT this whole time. Like, nothing has been prepping you more than your college courses, hopefully. So honestly, the best content review in a way is doing well in your prerequisite courses.
Awesome. Yeah, all the resources you mentioned were great. What specifically, is there a specific content area that you're about to learn? Like, is it psych soc or biochem or something like that?
Yeah, no, I've been struggling a little bit with physics. So I've been like kind of going over physics and making sure that I have all the formulas down, like going over practice problems in that section, like Gen Chem, biochem, like the pathways, like reviewing those, like the endocrine system, kind of just like going over like the different pathways and systems.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many great resources. When do you take your exam, if you don't mind asking?
End of August.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think Khan Academy is great for physics. I've got a couple pathways that I've made with an app called Traverse that could help. I don't know if you use Anki. That's a great way to master content as well.
Yes, I'm using Anki, and I created like physics formula flashcards, and I've been going through those.
Awesome. No, that's great. Then I think you're really prepared. So that's awesome. I think we'll probably end here, but Sally, if you have any questions or just want more answers to anything specific, just feel free to reach out to Noah or me through Slack, and we can answer anything you have or send you any links.
Sounds great. Thank you guys so much.